Mr. Dunn, you've acknowledged there's an enormous problem created by your industry. Don't you think it's possibly a bit convenient that you come along to us this morning and argue that the regulation should be focused on retailers, knowing that trading standards haven't got the capacity for enforcement, and on social media? It's a great diversion tactic. Don't you think there's actually a problem with your products that you should look at?
No, absolutely not. These products have been around well over 15 years. They are the most successful way that adults quit smoking here in the UK. We've now got 4.2 million people vaping successfully that were primarily ex-smokers.
Why do you think it's necessary to produce flavours like sweets and to market them with cartoon characters?
Well, you're not supposed to be able to do that, and this is why one of the things that we've called on is
none of your members produce any products which are flavoured in the way that's been described by our previous witness.
We have an extensive code of conduct that our members sign up to, and we don't use cartoon characters on our products.
But we do all the sort of flavours that we've heard from other witnesses.
Well, flavours are extremely important to adults. That's one of the reasons why vaping is so successful.
Can we bear?
I'll give you an example. I'm almost 60 years of age. I like gin, for instance. I have a strawberry candy floss gin at home that comes in a pink bottle. I have a bubblegum flavoured gin. The flavours are important to young people. But should they emulate food products? No, they shouldn't. And according to the law, that is not allowed. But this is one of the reasons why we've called for the MHRA to be given the teeth and given the powers to look at product design and packaging before they approve any products. A lot of the products that you're talking about that come into this country illegally are not subject to those same regulations. And one of the problems when I talk to trading standards is they say they're under-resourced, they don't have the facilities to do that. And this is why we are calling for the licensing fee, and we're calling for the fines to be done not only on retailers but also on distributors bringing in these illegal products. And all of those resources should be ring-fenced and given to trading standards. Talking about some of these distributors, we provide intelligence to both trading standards and to Border Force. We've reported the same wholesaler in one city 25 times and no action has been taken on that case. The industry is not here to sell to children. The industry is not here to hide from the fact that some road retailers and distributors are bringing in products that are unsuitable.
I'm sure we'll come back to some of those points. Mr. Saxton, I mean, you used a different diversionary tactic. You said the problem wasn't necessarily social media or retailers. You said it was enforcement. And you made the case that the problem is if we regulate vaping, it'll just drive towards a black market, people towards a black market. Isn't that exactly what Big Tobacco argued about smoking when we tried to regulate cigarettes?
There may be some parallels to that, but that's categorically not what we're trying to advocate here. I think going back to your point on flavours, I think some of the examples you use in the media have a really implicit role to play here that many, and I submitted some to the clerk ahead of this session, if you saw them, that are used are not regulated products on the UK market. Anyone that's using names that simulate food or drink should be targeted and prosecuted by those food and drink under existing regulation. They would not be allowed. Anyone that flouts with flavour names that are so ridiculous or emulating those food or drink, again, would be no reputable business that would do that, and those should absolutely be banned. Having said that, the role of flavours, if any of you have been a smoker, is absolutely critical to enabling a successful quit attempt. You will be addicted to tobacco and you may start your journey on tobacco. To be successful, and there is now data that shows over 80% of successful quit attempts are made by people moving away from those flavours that they're actually addicted to flavours that are furthest away from that for obvious reasons, that's where their dependency is. So please, if you can get across, there is a really critical role for flavours for aiding a smoker's quit attempt. The examples that you give, and many of them, are actually examples where they are not reputable businesses, not regulated, that are finding themselves on the market. But I do agree that must be tightened up, and no reputable business would sell those or create those today.
I have to say I'm an ex-smoker. I didn't smoke cigarettes because I thought they tasted nice. It was because I was a nicotine addict.
Yeah.
But let me come to the argument you're making, and you've both made, that, and you're making it again now, that the value of your products is in getting people off smoking. Cast your mind back to when the Tobacco Products Directive was being discussed 10 years ago. There were two routes that were being looked at. One was that the product should be licensed for exactly that purpose that you describe. The other was that it would have a more light touch regulation as a leisure product. Why did the vaping industry so strongly resist licensing?
For me, licensing is really clear. It's an extremely laborious process, and actually the products that are already extremely effective for smokers to gain access to, actually by the time they'd gone through that process and out the other side, would likely be out of date. And the most important thing is if you look at any SME that's set up a purposeful business in this sector to enable smokers to move away from their addiction, you will find that they would not be able to afford the fees that would be charged through a licensing process. And actually, what would you find as a negative consequence? The only people that would be able to afford access to go to those licensed products would be big tobacco businesses that are causing the issue in the first instance, but then secondly claiming to actually be solving it. And that's the reason. The access to products today, and has been demonstrated through the reduction in smokers and the growth in vapers, up to the recent single-use product, has been extremely effective outside of licensing.
Isn't it true that if it had been licensed as the sort of medicinal product that you describe, there would have been a much smaller market?
I think there would have been much smaller uptake. I think we'd still be fine.
Much smaller opportunities for you as an industry?
Much smaller opportunities to move the transition of smokers, which 2 out of 3 people, if used directed by the manufacturer's instructions, will die. There would be much less opportunity to convert those across. Yes, I agree.
We've heard from previous witnesses that vaping is more addictive than smoking. Do you know what the proportion of nicotine in your products is compared with cigarettes?
Yeah, so I don't have any evidence on the former, so I'd be interested if there is any that's been submitted on the former. But again, the media in this instance tend to cite a single product which contains 20 mg per mil or 40 mg across 2 mil, which is typically what a single-use product will have, to one cigarette that's 12 mg. The important distinction here is a packet of 20 cigarettes will contain roughly 250 milligrams of nicotine. That will take about 150 to 300 puffs to get through. A single-use device, therefore, with 40 milligrams compared to 250 milligrams take about the same time to go through. So the relative nicotine needs to be really importantly positioned. A packet of 20 actually has far greater nicotine than a single-use product with 40 milligrams in.
Why do you think your product's more addictive?
I don't have any evidence to that effect. In fact, actually to the contrary, because the efficiency of a combustible cigarette to drive nicotine into the system, so my understanding, is far more effective than a disposable vape, where the nature of the puffing is far different to how you would with a combustible cigarette. So I certainly don't have evidence to support that myself.